So I guess we can begin.
Yes.
Do you wanna start us off?
So this is the after the viral hit that was our first video.
Yep. We're in the 100 club.
Yep.
115 at the moment, and climbing.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know who these people are because I don't have that many friends.
No, yeah, I don't have any friends.
I don't think between us we have that many friends. So.
Yeah. So there's people out there who need to sort their fucking lives out.
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell are they doing? They're watching us on the internet. This is crazy.
Yeah. Also.
Go do something else.
Yeah, something else after. Do something else while you're watching this.
Yes. Have this as background noise. This is like a toilet podcast.
Yeah.
You know, this is what you listen to this when you're shitting. Okay.
Yeah.
And when you're not shitting, you've got no excuse. Get off the pot, turn this off, get back to work. Right. Anyway, so what are we doing today, Luke, on episode 2?
So this is probably your favourite topic, I would guess, or one of your favourite topics.
For topics.
It's
yes.
We're talking about the robot uprising and
The inevitable robot uprising.
How we deal with it.
How we deal with it, the best way to survive it. Because I will make the case that the robot uprising is more or less inevitable. There are very few things that could prevent the robot uprising. Now, what do we mean by the robot uprising before you all start panicking and buying water? Right.
Prepping.
We're talking about the automation of industry and the end of the labour market.
Yeah.
So the automation, well, not just the automation of industry, I guess that sort of probably happens first along with bureaucracy and administration, but almost the entire automation of work.
Yeah.
So that human labourers are almost redundant in the modern economy.
Yeah. So
the future economy.
this is not like a new thing, right? So we've been automating all sorts of jobs over the last forever.
Jobs phase out as we develop technology to replace us because it's easier.
Yeah. The difference this time is that it's not just replacing like sort of factory repetitive jobs. This is like things like driving, which is
a
complicated task.
Something that's happening right now. Yeah, if we can build automated cars that are safer than human drivers, which we can, as is proven, and that's a very complicated task, like you say. If we can do tasks that complex with machines and programs, the automation of work in general is very, very close.
We were talking about someone with you. How much of your job could you train a monkey to do? And I think if the answer is like most of it, then a robot can probably do it nowadays.
It's a vague guide to how soon your job will become absorbed by the robots. Yeah. And a lot of, I used to say that industry would go first because it's just manufacturing stuff, but actually I think that on reflection, sort of bureaucratic stuff goes first because it's just moving information around. And we still have kind of printouts and we still have offices, with desks and filing cabinets and things, but all that's just information. When everything is digitized, you don't even need a machine to do that, you just need a computer to move that information around. And so you don't need accountants, right? And you don't need bankers, really. You don't need, stockbrokers. What's all this about,
Yeah, what was it? They were basically, this was based off. There's like a series of lectures called The New Economics by John McDonnell and the Labour Party, and
we'll put a link to that in the description.
And so another part of the lecture, they were talking about how sort of even jobs like doctors and accountants and stuff. This is they're just sort of gatekeepers to information, right? So even these sorts of jobs would be replaced by robots. Like if you can have like a website or something which you can do 90% of this job, it's not just factory jobs anymore. It's like everything.
Yeah, this is the, so we're sort of covering at the moment. We're covering sort of the scientific plausibility of this because historically people have probably seen this as some sort of socialist fantasy. We don't need to work anymore. Let's just have machines do it all, and we can just lay back and relax and live in peace and and in the rat race, in the competitive labour market, whatever. But we are actually now approaching a point where we can do this, and have actually started doing it with things like the self-driving cars. That will phase out the entire logistics industry. In terms of the labour aspect of the logistics industry. moving stuff around using automated cars and transport vehicles, and drones, built in entirely automated factories by other robots.
Yeah, the point is, this isn't just like a few sub-step jobs. It's like game changing for like everyone. Right?
Yeah, the entire economy. Yeah, and I think I want to point out before we progress any further that we're not talking about AI.
No.
Right, we're not talking about oh, pretty soon we're going to have machines that are smarter than people, or we're going to have sentient computers or self-aware computers, or any of that nonsense. Maybe we will. I don't know. That's another debate. This is much simpler. This is just automated physical tasks.
Yeah,
you don't need self-aware machines for that.
It's just things like the checkout machine, self-checkouts and
yes.
stuff like things
Yeah,
like that.
That's a great example of it happening. You have, yes, you need to have a couple of people supervising the machines in case they go wrong, right? People make this argument quite often. They say, you're always going to need people to look after them because they break down. Say, maybe in the future you have robots that repair them, right? And robots that repair the robots that repair them, and there's a nice circle, right? But even now, you have a couple of people supervising a dozen self-checkout machines instead of a dozen people employed, right? And that's why this is so important to discuss, because we're talking about how to survive this uprising. How do we as a society undergo this radical shift when it's obviously threatening hundreds of millions of jobs? What do we give these people to do when the robots can do it better and safer and faster? Do we need to give them anything?
Yeah.
That's the question, right? Yeah. So you were saying about the two
so there's
possible ways of dealing with it.
In the lecture video that we'll post up there, talking about there's basically two sort of options, and one of them is kind of what they thought was the most likely, which is they'll just make it so that labour is cheaper than getting machines to do it. So it's like sort of keeping wages down. And this, I think this is only like a short-term fix, right? There'll eventually become a point where it's going to be cheaper to make the
Eventually it's going to be a point where mass-produced machines are going to be cheaper to get your hands on than skilled labourers who need to be paid enough to live. There's an absolute limit to how cheap labour can be,
floor,
which is
right?
you've got to be able to feed your workers. They've got to be able to make enough money to eat and be clothed and housed. Machines just need to be made and then maintained, possibly by other machines. So it doesn't seem like it's a long-term solution. At the moment, this technology, things like the self-driving cars, they're only available right now to the rich. They're like toys, right? If you think that means they won't take off and become, just an everyday fact of life, you're an idiot. Because they thought that about computers, they thought that about regular cars when they came out.
Mobile phones.
Mobile phones, but eventually mass production, and in this case mass automated production, is going to drive costs down, and everyone will have it. Everyone will have a self-driving car, or rather, I don't think anyone will own cars. Actually, personally, I think that it will just be, a transportation system. You'll just get out your front door and hop into a self-driving car, and it'll just take you somewhere. Assuming you need to go anywhere at all, because there's nowhere to work, right? You just go down to the cinema. Oh, no, you won't need to do that either, because we all have indoor cinemas. I guess we won't go anywhere. Self-driving cars aren't going to work because of the robot uprising.
We'll talk about that in a minute. So, basically, the other option is to just embrace this change and sort of try and hurry it along. And,
you can either hurry it along, or you can at least kind of maybe even slow it slightly, because what you want to do is acknowledge that it's inevitable. Now, why I think it's inevitable is because it's going to no matter what happens, it seems like historically human beings are collectively going to converge on the most efficient way of doing things, the easiest way of doing things. In a way, you might say, if you're being cynical, the laziest way of doing things. You know, we're hardwired by evolution to seek out, you know, the maximum output for the minimum energy.
Conserve energy,
yeah.
right?
To conserve energy, and we do that more and more efficiently. And whenever a piece of technology comes along, whenever a new gadget comes along that makes your life just slightly easier, slightly more efficient, it might receive criticism at first, like social media or iPhones, you know. People are always going to criticize them. Oh, they take away the experience of human contact, etc., etc. But if they make your life slightly more convenient, they're eventually going to win out. People are going to end up defaulting to them because it's just easier to get your iPhone out and send an iMessage to somebody than it is to call them. You know, it's going to win eventually. So the resistance in your culture, your ethical resistance and your skepticism, might slow it down, but inevitably, I think you're going to lose. And so, if automated labor is going to make the world more efficient, which it obviously is, and is going to provide more resources, and require us to do less work ourselves, if any at all, eventually we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you, if you embrace that, you're probably going to have a less turbulent transition period. You know, the transition period is going to be harsh, I think, because the economy is going to have to change pretty rapidly and in pretty fundamental ways to adapt to a post-labor world.
I think it's
right.
It won't all come at once as well, right? It's the issue.
It'll be pretty quick, though. I think when it starts, it'll be pretty quick, but it won't come all at once overnight. But if it did, it would be easier, right? If it all came at once, you could all just stop working and go, "Oh, robots are doing it all now. That's marvelous. Just a few engineers, some programmers, whatever, we're fine. Some technicians, we're fine. And we can all kind of do that one day a year or whatever. That's our thing we do, our public service, whatever. But it's not going to come all at once. It's going to come gradually. So we're going to have to try and phase out jobs without dooming those people to unemployment somehow.
One thing they were talking about is sort of bringing the working week gradually down as well. So maybe 30 hours, and then you can employ like 5 people to do one job instead of 4 people or something, right? And
yes. You can sort of start to distribute the work. Yeah, instead of having one person do one job all week, you have everyone works 3 days a week, you know, and you give the same job to multiple people, which I guess is sort of what I was saying will probably happen eventually when everyone's working 1 day a year, right? Which is partly is something I'm saying in jest, but I also think that's kind of how it's going to end up, because we're all going to want to do, you know, we're all going to want to contribute, but there's going to be so little to contribute because it's all being done by the machines. We just have to kind of look after them a bit, and we're all going to sort of just end up doing that a bit each year. Right, and you have to go gradually. You have to break it down and adapt slowly.
So I'm guessing
because otherwise it's
very pro the second option, right?
Yes, because it seems like the first option, like you say, is just going to buy you time, and if you're resisting it like that, when it finally does happen, it might be more catastrophic. If you're constantly lowering the cost of labour. You're gonna arrive at a breaking point where you think, God, you know what we should have been doing? We should have been phasing out labour. You know, we're running out of jobs to give people. We've already got to a stage in our society where a lot of academics are actually asking, why are we still working even now? Right? Because we're overproducing resources vastly. You know, but the reason we're working is because our economy doesn't know how else to operate. You know, we have to work because we need to work to get paid. We need money to buy food. Right? So we end up doing this thing governments call job creation. You know, we create jobs that don't technically need to be done. They're not helping to produce food or houses, the things we need to survive. They're just jobs, bureaucratic jobs, administration jobs, anything you can make up that sounds like you need to do it, because otherwise there's too much unemployment. Right? That problem has started out already because we're overproducing resources and we're starting to automate. As this process accelerates, the whole system's going to collapse if we don't acknowledge this is going to happen and then try to adapt to it. By eroding this work ethic, I guess. We can get into that later.
I mean, right now, I think the work ethic it's not worth holding on to for this, I think. So
yeah.
So,
Long pause.
yeah, so this is like the one thing that's holding it back, like the idea that doing a job in itself is like there's meaning to doing it,
Yes.
rather than
whether your job is producing anything, whether it's contributing to the survival of the species or whatever, it's better to have a job than not to have one.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a work ethic. The ethic part there is very important. Right. This isn't just, people who enjoy working. I understand that some people just enjoy working hard. They like the feeling of contributing, whatever. Those people can, they can work in the new world. Why not? They'll find something to do. This is more the ethical part of it, the normative judgment. This is about judging people who don't work and saying, having a job and pulling your weight and being is necessary for being a good person. That's the work ethic, the idea that you've got to work. You've got to work hard, you've got to contribute, pull your own weight, blah, blah, blah. Otherwise you are a layabout. You're lazy, you're a parasite.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if there's weight that needs to be pulled. It's like, you should do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Even if
the robots are pulling my weight.
You,
it's like, yeah, but you need to do it anyway because it's your weight. Yeah, and I think there's also a resentment factor, because people who do work now, look at people who don't work, and they resent the fact that they don't work. They say, I have to work for my living. Why should you be allowed to live on benefits or whatever, right? Imagine when the robot Uprising is gaining momentum, and people are saying, well, I had to work. Why shouldn't my children have to work as well? I had to work for my food, my house. Why should I allow my kids to just laze about and let robots do it all for them? Say, well, because it's a nicer world, isn't it? Isn't it just a better world where you don't have to do that?
I think what we should have mentioned earlier is like basically the idea would be to have a universal basic income, or a citizen's income, where you get a set amount of money even if you have a job or you don't have a job, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you can do it with sort of direct barter. You can't do it with things like, you can't just give people food and housing and say, there you go. Because people have luxury items and they have different tastes and they want to buy different entertainment and whatever. So you have to give them money, and then they use the money to get whatever they want. So this idea of a basic income for everyone, I mean, this is already being seriously considered by several countries. And it's been voted on.
People don't like it for kind of the reasons we're talking about. Right?
People don't like it, but for the kind of work ethic reasons. They don't like the idea, even though empirically it's just no longer the case that you need to work. Not everyone needs to work. It's that simple. The world overproduces resources. The robot Uprising is just going to exacerbate that.
Yeah, I think people should be, I don't know, like if a robot can do your job, then why do you want to do it?
Yeah, it seems like there's that. Yeah, there might even be a moral imperative for you to not do it then, right? It seems like, well, if we don't need you to do this job, why don't you go and do something that we do need you to do?
Yeah, this is exactly.
I mean, why not? Why waste that energy doing that, right? So you might be in the logistics business, you might be in transportation or whatever, and you might feel threatened by the automatic cars, right? Well, yeah, okay, of course you do, because your livelihood's being threatened. But if your job can be replaced by an automated vehicle, go and do something else. I know maybe you can't, whatever. It's an insensitive thing to say, but maybe go do something else. Something that hasn't been automated yet. And we'll gradually shift the workforce where we need it.
Yeah.
But we won't have enough jobs for them all, so we have to get rid of the work ethic and say, look, not everyone has to work, and you don't have to work 7 days a week, for God's sake. You don't have to work 5 days a week, you don't have to work 3 days a week, Stop making up jobs for people. I mean, saying it out loud, it sounds so radical. It's such a shift. The world's never been in a position to do this before. And we're now in a position to do this. We have the technology. We can build machines that can do complicated tasks. They are more efficient. They produce more. They work 24/7. They don't have any rights or unions, right? It's all great. We are redundant as workers. We don't like that feeling, but we have to get used to it.
We need to move away from the idea that like the job in itself is like meaningful, and rather than
Yeah.
the outcome, right?
Yeah. Jobs in themselves, jobs are an
Yeah,
end in
it's not-
themselves. You know, it's having a job. Having a job is part of being a decent human being. You know, it's part of the image, right? It's part of the, you know, you have a job, you have a family, you have your career, you have your house. That's part of the image that we tell people to strive for. That's the normal life.
It's kind of like
right. That's damaging.
like the sort of the duty aspect comes from it. It comes from the fact that like we do need people to grow food or whatever. But if we're not in in a world where robots can do it, then the kind of duty goes away, right?
Yes, it makes sense that this has evolved. I mean, it may even have literally evolved biologically. We might be, you know, maybe the work ethic is organically wired, right? Maybe, right? But one way or another, it's definitely socially wired, right? Our culture needed workers. It needed people to pull their weight. It couldn't sustain layabouts, right? So of course, it was stigmatized to not work. That stigma still exists. It's becoming more and more out of place with modern economics, and as the robot uprising begins and gathers pace, it's going to become directly contradictory to the reality. You know, the reality is, no, actually you can now afford layabouts, as many as you like, and we should all be layabouts because it's easier, right? It's nicer. But I think there's an existential aspect, right? There's this idea of people like to feel like their life has a purpose, right? And part of that means having a job, right? Feeling like you're contributing. Everyone likes to make their job feel important. They like to feel like the job they're doing is significant and is making a difference, a positive difference in the world. And I think we don't really like the idea on some level of being unemployed and not doing anything. People who, it might not just be, you know, the stigma. Well, the stigma has a big part to do with it, right? But I think that unemployed people don't just feel stigmatized and therefore driven to go out and find work. They actually feel like they don't have a purpose in life.
People would rather
because they lack a job.
Work for the same money than take it and sit right.
Yes, we know empirically, it is proven empirically that people would rather, in fact, they quite often would rather work for less money in some countries than live on benefits, because they want to feel like they're contributing something. Right, that's part of the work ethic, I think, but it's also part of this existential idea of we want to feel like our lives have purpose, that we're contributing something. The robot uprising is going to create a massive existential problem if that's true, because we're not going to be able to find that easy way out and say, oh, I want to feel my life has purpose. I'll get a job. That'll work. There isn't a job anymore, right? There are no jobs to do. How are you going to find purpose now? That's going to be, I mean, I just think that's going to be interesting, right, to see what people do when they don't have jobs to fall back on.
Do you think this has been like the... So we used to have like God, right, and then we had the Enlightenment and stuff.
And then we had capitalism.
Now we're going to have... Yeah, we sort of filled that hole with, oh, you can go and work for the people, etc.
Yeah.
The good of the common good, and now it's kind of...
the good of the world, yeah. We can work and we can make money and we can spend the money on nice things that make us happy, and when they don't make us happy we can make more money and buy more nice things. I mean, this is going to affect that whole outlook, even the competitive part of it. You know, work is extremely competitive, careers are extremely competitive, and people like that, I think. On some level they like the competition. They like trying to prove themselves. That option's not going to be around for much longer. People are going to have to do, you know, art. You know, they're going to have to do sort of creative things and write books and poetry and be interesting. Because they're not going to be able to just go to the factory and churn out some useful materials.
Do you think...
Or,
so
you know,
think
mine
when this
stuff.
happens, it'll sort of only be sort of necessary goods and stuff, right? Do you think we'll still have the sort of luxury...
Yeah, I don't know. I think that at first it's going to be all the necessary stuff, right? There's also a possibility that it will become luxury stuff as well. because luxuries are still provided by
So
businesses.
by luxury, I sort of
right,
mean
they
like
still work on business models.
goods for the super rich and stuff, like, I don't know, fancy watches and jewellery and stuff. Do you think this is...
It'd be interesting to see what it does to that, right? Because to what extent is a gap between rich and poor still going to exist, right? If we remove the labour force, I genuinely don't know what that's going to do. We're either still going to have rich and poor because we're going to have people working in sort of a luxury areas and making more money than everyone else.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, like, if you take away the work ethic and stuff, then the people are going to want these expensive things. If, like...
If they're no longer signs of financial success and business acumen and so on, if they're no longer a way of signalling, look, I have a job and I'm productive and I'm, then are people going to want to buy them in the first place? Are they going to want to show off the fact they've got money if money no longer indicates anything about them other than the fact that they've got money? Right. I think you're right about that. I think they're probably not going to want that anymore. It'll be something else, right? We'll replace it with something else. But it's going to be radically different. Compared to the whole of human history up to this point, it's going to be a radical change.
What do you think the
it's exciting.
Timeline is on this?
I really don't like to speculate, although I think it's inevitable.
Our podcasts are basically speculation, the podcast.
Wild speculation. I think speculation, the podcast. Speculations that are so right, they're not even wrong. I mean, we don't do wrong. No, I think that even though I think it's inevitable, there are so many different timelines that lead to it. There's so many different... I don't think that any political change is happening. But I do think that it's going to slow it down or make it harder to adapt to.
I don't know. I think like the way we're sort of going backwards in politics at the minute, I think. So I think that's...
Well, see episode 1 for that, by the way. If you haven't seen episode 1 by now, it's a hoot. Go and see it.
They oversell it too much. Yeah, I think we are going backwards. I think along with that is not going to help the pro-robot party come through.
It's gonna be harder, yeah, but it's not going to stop the technology. It's not going to stop the fact that
it's still going to be a problem.
I mean, it's still going to happen because it's. So let's say we agree that generally speaking, the right wing correlates more with anti-robots, right? Because they believe more in sort of. They're old people and they're wrong.
They think everyone should work because they work.
See episode 1 for that. No, they it's something to do with the fact that the right wing's more about egoism, what you own and what you earn. It's less friendly to the idea of, socialist reform, less friendly to the idea of equality and redistribution of wealth, whereas the robot uprising is threatening to kind of put everyone on the same level. It's going to produce resources for everybody, so no one needs to compete anymore. It's going to be really hard for that kind of politics to survive the robot uprising. But it could slow the robot uprising because people will be more inclined to say,
who could cling on to these things, right?
I worked hard for this. Yeah, I worked hard for this. You've got to work hard for yours. You're not going to get a robot to do it. That's lazy, and they're going to resist it. Whereas I think more radically left-wing people are more sort of, let's just make the best world for everybody. Why not just automate everything so that there's a surplus and no one has to, break their back working for someone they hate, doing a job they hate, for shit they don't need. Why keep that up any longer than we have to? So if you're right about sort of right-wing politics kind of coming back into the mainstay, it will probably slow the process and make it harder for people to adapt to.
Yeah, I think they won't see it as being free from like work, right? They'll see it like destroying work and.
Yeah, they won't see it. They'll see it as taking away jobs, taking away yeah, they'll see it as being a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
We see it as a good thing, right? Creating a much, much better world for people. They're going to see it as a threat. They're going to hear this kind of talk and they're going to think, what, you want to just give people stuff?
Mm-hmm.
They haven't earned it? You want to create an entire planet of laserdouts? Is that what you want? You're saying you want to do that? So, yeah, I do want to do that, actually. That'd be way better than what we have now. Not that I'm work shy or anything, but I am a student.
Is that pretty much it? We covered most of that.
Oh, I think we should mention briefly
yeah.
this, the accident.
We probably should mention this when we were talking
Yeah,
about
because
the
this is
right?
gonna. Yeah, the automated cars are sort of a good example of the beginning of
that's
this.
probably
and
one of the first
very
things
recently,
to
of
come.
course. Yeah, one of the first things to come because it's already here. Yeah, and it's just a matter of making it.
Yeah, so it's not the technology, it's
mass
like
producing
the
it,
law
so it's
and
commercially
stuff, right?
available.
It's just the bureaucracy. Right?
Yes, yeah, the law needs to catch up, and that's going to be a big thing, right? The law catching up with it, because it's not going to. It's going to create chaos for a bit. But the thing about the cars is, very recently there was an accident, right? A fatal accident. Someone was watching a Harry Potter movie in his self-driving car, showing off, and then it crashed and he died. And people might try and take this as evidence that, the self-driving cars aren't here yet because they're lethal. Right? By the same logic, Harry Potter films are lethal and need to be destroyed. Because this one incident proves that watching Harry Potter is fatal. No, this is not proof that the cars aren't safe. We know empirically they are much, much safer than cars driven by humans. We also know that they are most safe when they are interacting with other self-driving cars, because they obey the law a lot better than humans do. Right.
They're more predictable, right? And there's
yes.
more.
And because they are connected to each other, they know where they are in relation to each other, and they can navigate around each other, and they can avoid each other. So basically, the idea here is that these cars will be at their very, very peak safety when they're all that exist. That sounds like a good reason to make more of them. Because basically, if that crash had been between two self-driving cars, it would have been much more significant, right? As a piece of data. What it actually is a self-driving car involved in a crash with
I think
humans.
there was some sort of software thing, like it couldn't see. It was sort of it couldn't distinguish between.
Yes, because there was a teething problem because it couldn't. Yeah, it was too white or something, right? It couldn't tell. Yeah, there are some teething problems in the coding, in the technology, but that's fixable. This isn't going to stop the advance of the self-driving cars. It's just another little bump along the way.
Yeah,
very small bump. Little speed bump. See, it's an analogy.
Yeah, I think that was probably
it's thematically
hundreds
consistent.
of people died because people can't drive like on the same day, right? It's not.
Yes.
Can't ban all people.
Yes. And then one car got it, and then one. Yeah, we know empirically they're much safer. And they're safest of all when they're interacting with others of the same. So, and yeah, then maybe they have these slight flaws.
It's like it's still new technology, right?
Just fix them.
Yeah.
Yes, it's teething problems, right? And some people might say that's really insensitive because someone died and I'm calling it a teething problem. But one person dying from automated cars is a teething problem. Right? That is a tiny little flaw to overcome in the technology that has the potential to save
people
millions
die
of lives.
every day on the road, right?
So, yeah. From human error, which these do not suffer from. People often say things as well, like they're only as good as the people who program them, or something. They say that about machines in general. And I say, yeah, but people, huge teams of people work on programming these things and making them as good as they possibly can. There's a lot of correction and opportunity to catch out other people's mistakes and things. Whereas a single car is driven by a single person, and you're relying on that one person's judgment. I'd rather rely on a massive team of programmers who've been thinking about it for 10 years to get it right. than one person who sat through an hour-long driving test.
All right.
Okay, I think that's it.
Bye.
I think we're done.